This is a review of the Crivit bike stand. I purchased this from my local Lidl for $32.09, and let's get into the boxing now. So right off the bat, I can tell this is pretty good quality for how cheap it was. It's a nice display and whatnot. Let me see this better. So it comes just laid flat and whatnot. Some assembly required, so let's build it now. So first, I'm gonna lay the actual base down, and then it comes with a tool tray, a little bar to keep your wheel in place when working on your bike, the clamp post, and the clamp. Now we're going to assemble the stand, and the first thing you want to do is take the main pole that slides in here. You're gonna want to loosen this a bit. Be careful not to let the part come off because it doesn't take that much loosening. You have to kind of shimmy it on in there. Goes in. Loosen this a little bit. Then take the clamp, slide it in, tighten that down. Make sure it's tight so when you clamp your bike in there, it's not going to come apart. You can also tighten this a little bit. Pick this up, clamp it, and this a little bit. Tighten that. Is it? And the next thing is the tool tray and parts tray. It's going to come with 2 bolts. Let me make sure you can see that. It's going to come with these 2 Allen bolts, an Allen key, part of the clamp, and then the actual tray. And you're going to put the tray right here. So again, I'm going to take one of the screws. Just going to set it in there. I'm going to screw one of the screws in by hand. Now it will be a little bit tight just because the plastic does flex a little bit. So you just kind of get it on in there and it'll go. So one thing is, if you pull this all the way back and then kind of put the bolts in there, it should go in there pretty easily, but you'll have to bend it a little bit and then just tighten that down with the Allen wrench. And overall, this seems to be pretty good quality. I mean, there's no paint scuffs or anything out of the box, and it doesn't seem to be flimsy anywhere. It's very heavy. When I first picked it up at the store, I couldn't believe how heavy it actually was for being so cheap. And I'm just gonna take this back down all the way. I'm gonna leave it a little bit loose just so I can still move it around a little bit. Keep tightening that one. Loosen that one a little bit. I have it a little bit loose just so I can move this around and whatnot. And so you just put like your Allen wrenches and your Torx keys and whatnot in there, and holds them pretty well. So the last clip you saw was from probably a little bit over a month ago, and I've had some time to actually use the stand and see how well it's performed and whatnot, so I can finally give a proper review on it. And so I'm going to go over the pros and cons of it, and is it worth $30. And so just a heads up, if you are looking at the stand because you don't have a ton of space, when the stand is actually expanded like this, the base of it is pretty big. I'll measure that off camera and probably put it in the description or the comments section. And so that's just a little bit of a con, but I do like the fact that I can fold it up, which I can just show you guys that right now. You just undo the little clamp at the bottom and slide it up, and it's pretty small. And I usually just kind of expand it out just slightly so I can stand it up like in the corner beside my toolbox. And so I wouldn't clamp a bike like this, but it works well for getting out of the way, or if you have to like put it in a closet or something, if you live in an apartment, that'll work pretty well. So I'll just show you that again. This is a little bit stiff because there is no grease or oil or anything that came on it. It's all just dry, and you just kind of push down the feet flat. And in the instructions, it does tell you to like weight it down with sandbags or something, but if you're on fairly flat ground, you shouldn't have to. But so let's go get into the pros of it. Pros, it's $30, so it's one of the cheapest stands you can get. You might be able to build one for cheaper, but overall, it's, if you buy it from Lidl or Aldi, it's probably the cheapest stand you're gonna find without having to, you know, go to Home Depot, buy a bunch of wood, make some cuts, measure it and whatnot, screws, hooks, etc. It's probably one of the best stands for the price. It is a fairly common design. You can find these things all over Amazon and eBay, ranging from like around $40 to $70-ish, around that price range. I don't know if it would necessarily be worth that much versus just, you know, building one yourself at that point, but if you really want to be able to collapse it, I'd say it's fine. And some things to note is make sure all of these bolts are tightened and whatnot, but don't tighten these ones too much because that's for the clamp. So you don't want to crack the plastic there or anything, or make it too tight. And there has been a little bit of wear on these little rubber bumpers, but overall, I like it pretty well. And I do like that, so you have to clamp your bike by the top too, which I'm not really worried about, because one thing I really like is there's a little channel right here for the cable. So if you have hydraulic brakes especially, you don't want to put a lot of damage on that cable, because then it might not work very well. Same goes for cable brakes or mechanical brakes too. You don't want to damage the housing on it. So I do like that it's not putting any pressure on that. It's only clamping the top tube. You could clamp it by the seat clamp if you just kind of undo this little part right here, twist it sideways, tighten it down. You could clamp it like that, but I prefer just holding by the top tube, especially because it balances the bike a little bit more when you're holding it. If you clamp it in a little bit close to the, well, let me just fix that. I'm gonna just grab my bike right here and clamp it up. So, this is my GT Aggressor Pro, which you guys, if you have seen my video on it, you will know that I have this. Let me just use the sand. And you just use a 5mm Allen key, which it does come with one, but I don't know where I've put it. And I like to just kind of, after I clamp it down, just make sure those bolts are pretty tight. Tighten down the top here. I have noticed sometimes if you put like a little bit too much torque on it, you can twist the clamp slightly, which that's not completely straight. Even if you have this blue knob right here tightened all the way, sometimes if you put a lot of pressure on your bike while working on it, you can end up twisting the clamp itself a little bit. So just make sure all these bolts are tight. And then just get your bike up. I put it about with that first tie right there in the middle where the cable goes through, and clamp it not so tight that it's like really hard to clamp down, but just enough to where it holds it. And if you do push it, sometimes you'll get it to rotate like that, but as long as you don't put a lot of torque on it, you should be fine. And so this works really well to clean my bike especially, but one thing I have noticed is this tube right here. After I washed my bike one time, I didn't wipe all the water off, so a little bit of rust started forming on it. So what I did, I just took some Park Tool grease that I had, just put a little bit of that on there, rubbed it all over it, and hopefully that'll keep the water out and so it doesn't rust anymore, because there is no grease on this at all when it comes. It's just all dry. So let me take this down so I can show you the stand a little bit better. So overall, I think this really is worth the price. For $30, you know, it's hard to beat that. And so this tray right here, I use it sometimes, sometimes I just forget it's there, but there's little spaces for Allen keys here. But one thing I have noticed, if you have just normal Allen wrenches like this, when you put them in there, sometimes if you knock it, it'll just fall through because there's not like a big T-handle, so it doesn't sit up there that well. And there is a magnet in the big tray, which so you can keep track of your bolts, make sure you don't lose anything small. When you're washing a bike, sometimes this will fill up with water, so most of the time I just remove it. And it's fairly easy to do. It's just two bolts on the back, you just undo them. Also, another thing to note is make sure when you are when you're spreading the base out, don't push too far, because there's a little there's a small part of the metal which is kind of pushed out to keep it going from too far, and if you push real hard on it, you can actually get it stuck on there, which I actually did one time. Thankfully it was okay, but just one thing to note. This makes it really easy for a lot of repairs, especially drivetrain and whatnot. So it helps a lot with that. I think I've gone over most of it, and so I can say I definitely recommend this if you can get it for $30, or maybe I wouldn't buy it if it's more than 50, but if you can get it for less than 50, I'd say it's definitely worth it if you do find yourself working on your bike a lot, or wanting to, if you work on multiple bikes too, you might want to get a nicer stand. But if you're just, maybe you have like a couple of bikes, maybe like one or two, you just work on them occasionally, but you also want something to, wash them with or something like that, this will work fine without being too expensive, and it's easy to, like I probably said before at this point, I don't know, but it's very easily to, fold it up, just get it out of the way for storage and whatnot, especially if you just have a garage like mine. I don't have a dedicated workshop, so I have to move it out of the way sometimes to park a car in here, and I just set it, beside my toolbox, and it works fine. It's very small, and just kind of, I usually don't collapse it all the way, so I can still, keep it up without it falling over something. I don't want to break it, but yeah. So overall, I recommend it, and also, forgot about this. It comes with this little piece right here, which you can wrap around you put one side around here, and then another side you put on either your wheel or your handlebars to keep your front wheel from moving side to side, while you're trying to work on your bike or something like that. You don't want it knocking around into stuff. Yeah, if you're trying to do a brake bleed or something, you don't really want the fluid going everywhere. So I haven't used it all that much, but it definitely works. But you just kind of, there's a little tab right here, you unscrew, pull it out, tighten it down. It works pretty well. And these rubber straps, they just kind of have little holes that you just press it on there. Like that. And yeah, I usually just kind of hang it off the back of the stand right here. So that's it, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.